Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. All the major international development partners have projected that the Ghanaian economy will pick up from 2025. From the World Bank, the IMF, the ECOWAS Development and Investment Bank, and Fitch, that is the rating agencies. But how do private firms or private businesses in this country position themselves to ensure that they benefit from this projection? Or rather, they are not fooled to think that things are going to get better. What about those who will argue that for a country that is going through a debt exchange program, it might take a longer while, so we are not out of the woods yet? Well, he's somebody we could call an economist, a business strategist, the board chairman of board chairs in the country, where he's chaired more than 7 companies in this country, and also led more than 10 businesses as a chief executive and a managing director. Well, guess who I'm talking about? He is Dr. Ishmael Yamsom. Doc, immense thanks for your time and having time in your busy schedules to engage us. As some would choose to call you the board chairman of board chairmen. How are you doing, by the way?
Like, I'm doing well. Doing fine.
Yeah. Everything is okay?
Yes.
In the midst of all these challenges,
I mean, if you are playing golf every morning, you're
still doing that, right?
I do that, yes.
You still have the strength to go out and play golf. I mean,
yes.
I'm struggling to learn that sport.
Oh, my God. You should start now. Now.
So that I can be a pro in the next 5 or 10 years.
Because you see, when you live in the country like ours, with all the stresses, you need an opportunity to just de-stress from time to time. And golf provides you that great opportunity. I can tell you, it's been a lot of difference to my health and my life.
Managing. The last time we spoke, we talked about the IMF and the push for government to go. Now they've gotten the program, some would say. For you, what do you make of it? Better late than never, or maybe why did it take us that long to make this move?
Well, let me say better late than never. But I've always asked the question, why should we even go there? Why would it have been necessary for Ghana to go to the IMF for what, the 17th time or so? And for me, that's the worry. And I have seen many structural adjustment programs in this country, and always the predictions are very glorious and the rest of it. Let's see what happens, because what I've seen in the program is tough. So for those of us in the private sector, I think there are many questions we need to ask. I mean, for instance, how is the program going to be funded?
The funder says it's providing 3 billion. The World Bank is coming on board with some around 5 billion. The AFDB is coming on board as well. And the other development partners are also coming on board to support this program. Yeah,
but that's the danger, you see. That means that we'll continue to be dependent on these institutions to build our country. And no country anywhere that I know of are dependent on the institutions forever to develop their country. So I mean, 3 billion for me over 3 years, which is 1 billion a year is nothing. So I think that we probably as a country need to ask some very basic, very different questions. For now, it's fine because we are firefighting. So if somebody brings you water, you take it. But I don't think that should be the solution to our long-term prosperity of this country.
But what do you tell those who might argue that we have missed that boat or we've missed that chance where we could have taken commanding heights of this economy, and now we are in a midst of a crisis? So anyone who comes on board to help, we are going to take that.
We are not just in one crisis. We are in many crises. You see, George, this country, and I said it yesterday, literally, we don't have any excuse to be in distress.
Why?
We are not. God was so gracious unto us. God gave us everything, including big brains like you. You know, we have the people, we have the resources. What we have done is, you know, just misuse all those that God has given us. I mean, for instance, the next 3 years that I've seen the World Bank say the economy will begin to grow. If it happens, we thank God.
And don't you believe in that? Because you've been on record to have said that looking at the crisis that we are in, it could take a longer haul. The World Bank, the IMF, the ECOWAS Bank for Development and Investment, Fitch Ratings are all saying that by 2025, this economy is going to pick up.
But they are assuming so many things. They are assuming, for instance, that we are going to stop doing all the bad things we used to do. That's the first thing. That's a very fundamental assumption. These guys are going to be straightforward, disciplined. That's what it means. What I see doesn't give me that optimism.
Interesting.
They also are assuming that even the external environment will not continue to be as harsh as it has been. Because yes, our problem initially was homegrown, and then of course we had external issues compounding those issues that we were facing. I know that if you leave it to government, they always tell you it's COVID-19. I don't believe any of those things.
Why don't you believe that?
I don't believe that, because as far back as 2018, we had been warned that we were heading towards debt crisis. So why should we now blame something that came much later? If you look at the 2019 April IMF
staff report, an article for
consultation, there in black and white. COVID-19 didn't show up until November of that same year. So that cannot be the primary reason. But what I would say is that, look, it's gone, it's past, it's history now. What we should focus on is, what do we do going forward, right? Now we are all focused on doing what the fund is asking us to do. And let me say that when I hear people say IMF conditionalities, I feel very sad.
Why?
Because the program starts by saying this is the authority's own program, supported by the fund. So it's not the IMF imposing anything on Ghana.
Government itself has proposed that this is what they need to do to turn around the economy.
Yes, and then they change the narrative and say the IMF is imposing this or the IMF is, including some very learned people. The fund stopped imposing things on countries a long time ago. We have gone there with a program. And I hope and I pray that we deliver that program as we have delivered. But that's where the problems will come, because even in the last month or so, you would have seen a plethora of taxes, new taxes that have been imposed. On who? On the companies and individuals who are supposed to rebuild the economy. Unless they say government is the one going to rebuild the economy. But I know, and I'm sure you know, that government does not have the funds to rebuild this economy. That government has to partner the private sector in a practical way, very practical way, to rebuild this economy. And for me, until such time that sinks into the minds of our politicians, we're going nowhere.
But one would say that, how do we fund the recovery? I mean, the crisis that we are in, other developed economies have looked at placing windfall tax on companies and all the rest. Who finance this recovery? Is it by government embarking on a steer measure to cut down, which has implications on growth, or these same private firms that will benefit from these policies financed by paying taxes?
Yeah, you know, For instance, you just said something very interesting.
Austerity, oh.
The government, I have heard many things that have been said. We have placed emphasis on raising revenue. I haven't heard emphatically from government what exactly they are going to do to cut expenditure, from which areas and by how much. We know that our problem has been that all over these years we have spent more than we have raised by way of revenue. People always tell us, oh, but Ghana is not raising enough revenue. The GRA revenue figure will show you that they have been growing around 17% over the last 5 years per annum. So if we are still in a crisis, then it means that the bigger issue is the expenditure that government undertakes. Because if you look at the graph, and we did it 3 days or so ago, since 1992, we've never run a balanced budget. Not even to say that a balance with a surplus. So it means that we have consistently spent more than the revenue we raised. And why? And I can give you 100 reasons why. And that's why I say the bank will be robust, and the fund will be robust, and all these guys will be robust, and hope that the government will do what they promise that they are going to do. But until I see it happen, I don't believe that by 2025, this economy will be showing any great signs of full recovery.
These institutions have done the necessary extrapolations and the modules, but for you have seen it all in terms of the phases of these structural adjustment program, and you've had these reports before. It appears that it is more of Dr. Yamsom or Dr. Thomas Dalton Yamsom on this issue.
You know, I have always said that sometimes the fund and the bank have to share in the blame.
Why?
Because they themselves don't say it as it should be said. They were aware a long time that the government was doing things that would push this country into a crisis. And I can tell that the crisis that we have today, I haven't seen it all my life in this country.
Interesting, Doc.
Never.
I mean, through the structural adjustment, the step
like
1, step 2, and all the rest during the 80s that we read in the economic books and all that told us about how bad the situation is.
You can go back and look at the statistics. There's nothing like this before. Yet, every year they issue their report and they say to government, but they are not firm enough to say, look, we can see the trend taking you this way, and we will apply sanctions if there are any such things. But I believe that the fund and the bank have a greater responsibility also to themselves. Because I know they don't want Ghana to fail. They don't want Ghana to fail. And if they don't want Ghana to fail, then they must behave in a way that puts Ghanaian government. I mean, why? When we were borrowing literally every year, were they not aware? All that they will put in their report is that the excessive borrowing will lead you to debt distress. Simple sentence. And beyond that, what else could they do? Could they say to government, stop? Never.
But some will say, apart from those Article 4 consultations, the staff reports and the warnings, I mean, I had several interviews with the country rep that he raised all these questions. So some will say that, what else can they do? But in terms of raising these concerns.
But that is why then I go back to the answer to the question you asked about the growth. What faith do they have now to believe then that what the government has said they will do, that they will do it? Because if they don't do it, we won't reach where they are predicting that we will get to. We have elections next year. If there's nothing at all, we saw a replica of what will happen in 2024. And expenditure control is a big issue in an election year. So hopefully the fund and the bank have all come to a conclusion that even in next year, whatever the government has promised that it will do, But I can tell you from my own experience all over these years. Otherwise, why are we there for the 17th time? We always say this all the time. And that's why, for me, we need to ask different questions. You can have the IMF program. There's no doubt about it. Today, nothing stops government from saying all major projects will be on a PPP basis. That private sector will be at the center of economic infrastructure in this country. What stops government from saying that? Have you heard anybody say that? And I want to hear the budget that is going to be read on Monday.
I'll be coming to the expectations and all those things, but still on this IMF program that we are trying to scrutinize and all the rest, do you think, or do you see it as one of the several practical measures that needs to be undertaken to turn things around, or should be seen as an end to our solution? Because if you engage some government officials, the fund program was seen as the savior. Later, there were some also saying that it is part of. For you, should we see this fund program as one of several critical and tough decisions we need to take, or we need to undertake to turn this economy around?
And that's why the fund is clever to say this program is the authorities program and we are supporting it. So the IMF program should only be a support to what our government should do and must do. And for me, what is the problem? The problem has always been that we spend more than we raise in revenue. So let the government demonstrate in this budget on Monday that truly it is going to take steps, clear steps, credible steps, that it will cut expenditure, and that it can be quantifiable, it can be verifiable, and that we can all track it. Because if we maintain the same expenditure levels, then the IMF program can go sleep. Because you give me 1 billion a year. How much debt and interest is government paying every year? You know, and I know.
But Doc, some are saying that looking at the structure of our economy and the impact of any cut, any austere budget on the entire populace, businesses, that is where the challenge is. Maybe you need to spend to stimulate growth. I mean, in US, where they were, quote, printing money to try and stimulate growth, there's a challenge there, the various economic theories and all the rest. What should be the best way out? Because some are also saying that you need to spend to stimulate growth and turn the economy around.
It depends on what you spend on. It depends very much on what you spend on. And I would not advocate the government shouldn't spend. Government must spend, because after all, if government won't spend, it has to pay its employees. So government has to spend. It depends on what government should spend on. Government has a program, right? And there are programs that they describe as untouchable. So if you have a program that you are finding it difficult to fund, then why can't you say, in the short term, let me review this program to see whether there are savings I can make to save on expenditure. And you know, my experience in the private sector, you would have said to your bosses that I will bring my expenditure under control in 3 months, in 6 months, and they will track you. So it is a different thing putting it on paper that I'm going to do it, and another thing, living what you say you will do. So when you keep asking me who should fund it, I say the private sector and government must fund the growth that we're expecting. It is sad that in this country, every government after government after government after government, seems to think that they should do everything in this country, build the smallest bridge, build the smallest hospital, go and build everything, school, everything should be done by government. Where in the world does this happen? And we know why government wants to do those things themselves. Well, didn't we have a PPP program?
Yeah.
In fact, an act long time ago.
Yeah.
Where is it? Why don't we use it? Why is it that every major road contract must be awarded by government and government must go and borrow money? When there's a commercial value to it, that can be released by the private sector. And let me tell you, there's more money sitting in the private sector than in government. Ask any government over the world. That's why government all over the world use the private sector as partners. Partners. The trade fair side that we pull down, the Dubai trade fair side, does it belong to the government? No. So why should we own our trade fair side? Why? Why?
Doc, I'll take a break here. I mean, I'll come back to you to get your thought also a bit about the fact that if we should even cut, where should we cut? Okay. This is PM Express Business Edition. As you look at Ghana's economic recovery, what should be the role of the private sector, or what can the private sector do? And is the outlook that good for the private sector, or indeed they should be measured with their expectations about things turning around? We take a break. This is PM Express Business Edition. It's brought to you by Cherry Tree Properties and Syntex Tank. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we look at Ghana's economic recovery and what could be the role of the private sector, or whether indeed the future is bright for the private sector, or how can they strategize to ensure that they indeed position themselves for this expected pickup in the economy according to the World Bank. But Dr. Yamsom has a different view on that. This program is brought to you by Charity Properties and Syntex Tank. Doc, I was coming back to you to get your thoughts about if there should be any cut, where can we cut? The argument about how rigid the budget is, you know, and all the rest. And these all arguments are always put across when these arguments are about cutting the expenditure.
And then when you talk about rigidities,
in the budget.
My great friend Kosibuche, in great memory, in his time as finance minister, was talking about rigidities in the budget.
We are still talking about it.
We are still talking about it. And who creates those rigidities? We do. Our governments do, right? So if there are rigidities, remove the rigidities in the budget.
Constitutional, some would say. These are constitutional.
Well, that's fine. But that's fine.
Difficult to touch.
But the fact that the Constitution says you should appoint 19 cabinet ministers or
majority from parliament
or blah, 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 doesn't say you should have 100 ministers, right? There was no figure to it. And indeed, for me, my greatest worry is the way we are increasing the number of district assemblies.
Because the Constitution requires
and
it.
So by the time we are 50 million people, we will have 500 members of parliament. And even 275 we can't pay. So constitutional requirement, Constitution is not cast in stone. If you recall, during Professor Tamiri's time, there was a whole time spent on reviewing this. Why have we not had the courage to implement it or to revisit it, reshape it to suit our needs of today? George, you know, the world is changing very fast. My greatest fear as I sit here is that we will be left so far behind in the next, within 5 years or 10 years, that probably you will see the biggest exodus from this country to countries outside, you know, in the next 5 to 10 years. Why? Because what are we doing to give young people hope that they should be here? In this week, just this week, today is Thursday, 3 professionals have come to me leaving Ghana, all of them to the United States. These are highly qualified professionals. So now, back to what do we cut? We know when we should cut.
Mm.
I don't have to tell government when we should cut.
Yeah.
Because there are so many duplications of ministries, for instance.
You think the numbers should be cut down?
Yes. What do we need them for?
What makes an equilibrium minister, so an equilibrium ministry, or a better sized government?
As I see it here, that it will be a crime for me to say managing a country is the same as managing a company. Mm. But the principles are the same. Mm. The principles are the same. You can never dream all these in the private sector. Go and write a budget, a deficit budget, and then you don't even know where the deficit is going to come from. Mm. Right? We don't know where the financing is going to come from. But you keep on writing budgets and increasing the deficit year after year after year. Why can't we sit back now, this government, sit back and say, hang on, what have we been spending our monies on that haven't delivered value, for which we can make cuts? And we should be honest. We should be bold. We should be courageous. You don't need, cowardly leadership in this period. I know politicians will always say to you, oh, but if you don't do this, then they won't vote for you. That's fine. So you do it, they vote for you, only for you to go and destroy the country and make it worse. So there are many areas. I think there are too many ministries, there are too many ministers, there are too many hangers on, there are too many of everything. And I will never say government should not play a key role in the economy. But I will tell you that there are many things government doesn't need to do because it hasn't got the capacity to do it and do it well. There are many things the private sector can do. Many years ago, wasn't the government that was cleaning gutters? Yeah. Today, does government clean gutters?
No, it doesn't.
So there are things we can sit down and say, we should stop doing. But above all, and I've said it, I won't stop saying it, our problem is greed and corruption.
Let's look at the media review. And do you think that it presents a very fine opportunity to turn things around, to show the signs of commitment and to show the signs that we are indeed under a fund program and things are going to be different?
I can tell you that this is one opportunity the government shouldn't miss. It's one opportunity you shouldn't miss, to present a media review that is credible, that will build confidence, not only in the citizens, but in the private sector and in investors. That is their greatest opportunity. Because if the minister comes to read the same as usual budget, we shall do this. And then sometimes I sit down and I laugh because I count. The we shall, we will, we shall, we will, we shall, we will. And we never get there. You see, they have to come to the people with a credible budget, with credible signs that they are serious about cutting costs. Because, look, you cannot conjure revenue from the air tomorrow. Even if the private sector is going to pay all their taxes, they themselves are under stress right now. I can tell you that great majority of manufacturing companies are just collapsing. Great majority.
Because of external factors, external policies,
because
or they fail to strategize to still withstand the shocks.
Demand has collapsed. Costs have risen far in excess. You know, the cost of electricity, the cost of water, the transportation, because of petrol, two things in transportation. The fuel you use and the road you run on, and the cost of maintaining those vehicles on it. Yesterday I saw one I think it was a joy program, one on the Takwa Road.
Yeah.
I felt like crying. This was a journey I could do in 1 hour, 30 minutes. Today, you will do it in 5 hours. So we don't need government to go and borrow money that I'm going to consult Takwa. If government goes out right now to look for partners to build that road, they could find partners to build that road. But somehow in our mindset, government should do everything. Government should issue every contract. Government should, and I'm saying the world has changed. Don't we see that the world has changed? That we need to change our mindset of how you run a business and run a country. Why?
Maybe the private sector themselves have failed to move and take advantage of the opportunities to tell government that, listen, this is what we can do, bring this on board, let's move.
That is true. I would not deny that. I would not deny that. And I remember many years ago, far back in the early 80s, that when we formed the private sector foundation, we had private sector, public sector dialogue. And we influenced a lot of the legislation and government actions, and we did it together. Today, even among the private sector institutions, they are fighting.
Why?
Well, I'm not.
I'm just saying that there are several institutions that you expect for them to come together and command and dictate.
I'm saying that recently, when we were having this debate about go or no go to IMF, did you hear the boss of any private sector organization publicly advising government to go to the fund? No. No. And I say, why? Don't you realize that the impact will come to you direct? Now, they're all crying about new taxes. But when they had the opportunity to join with government to say, hang on, guys, we are all in this together. We don't believe that what we are doing will take us anywhere. No, they are scared. First they will say, oh, they will come after you.
That is a fact. I mean, I mean, I've had interactions with some business firms who say, like, George, when I started talking to you, the next thing I saw is a letter from GRA. These are the concerns, these are the fear. If I would stay, I mean, at your time at Unilever and these other companies, maybe you were bold to even take on the military dictators and all the rest of the instructions they gave you and what you did.
Yes, I know. But
not every CEO of today is prepared to withstand this unnecessary audits, an unnecessary squeeze, and regulator coming after you if it's not the GRA.
Yes, I fully understand that. And it's one of the things that, because in that program that the government has proposed, they talk about, credible partnership with the private sector. So if the way to cow the private sector is to use institutional power to harass them, then they are doing exactly the opposite of what they have promised the fund. You see? But the point is that, first of all, let me say that private sector people are not angels. Most of them also don't do what they are expected to do. Right? When I was in Unilever, we used to say, the day that a GRA man or somebody came to the office and asked for our books, and we were not confident enough to surrender our books, then we had failed. Because we will obey the rules. Now, if we are not obeying the rules, if you have cobwebs in your whatever, then it means that you are scared if the man shows up. But if you have been doing the right thing, paying your taxes and obeying all the rules, then why should you not have the confidence to speak? Because we are all in this together. It is not just the country that has collapsed. It is the businesses that have also collapsed. So maybe you even borrowed the money from some offshore company to come and invest in Ghana. And the country is in distress, so automatically your business is in distress. So we have a shared responsibility with government to make sure that the right things are done. And the private sector voice must be heard. They should organize themselves properly. I mean, one day I was just watching and I heard the Ghana Trade Association swearing, we will never buy made in Ghana goods because they are fighting each other. One is interested in imports, the other is interested in local manufacturing and export. So why can't we have a consensus? Why? I know Ghana can never be self-sufficient in everything.
Yeah.
So there are things we should import. There are things we should not import. Let me give you an example. About 7 companies today are assembling vehicles in Ghana. What have we done to make it possible for them to grow? When I went to Malaysia in 94, thereabouts, when they wanted to promote the automobile industry in the first, imported vehicle, the duty was 100%.
Should we do that locally?
No, well, I'm saying we should do something locally. We should do something because you have enticed them to come and bring capital and invest it here. Right? What did you promise them? What did you tell them? Which convinced them to come to the country? Now, have you delivered what you promised? If you haven't delivered what you promised, why should others follow you and come here? Why?
Because of my engagement, some of them still have some concerns. The automobile firm.
Precisely.
They do.
Precisely. I remember in my days, we had an assembly plant in Tema, where assembling Bedford trucks.
In those days?
Those days, 300 trucks were assembling every year. And after the first military coup, we were told that it was all socialist, we can never compete the Chapari, we should close it down. So government actually said they would not give us license to bring in CKDs, and we had to close down. Today, we have gone to entice others to come and assemble vehicles here. And they are struggling. Has anybody sat with them to say, we can see that you are struggling. What's the problem? What can we do? How can we support you?
How should the private sector strategize in all of these challenges and this projected pickup and all the rest and all those things? Some are saying that, listen, be measured on your outlook. Some are even looking at laying off. Some are looking at cutting down and all the rest. Reality strikes. What should these private firms be doing in all these things? I mean, we've seen some signs of recovery. Should that give them hope? Should they be measured in whatever approach or steps they want to take?
George, I will just give you a little exercise. Go and look for the 1961 budget statement. And you will find that in that document, the Nkrumah government, which was supposedly socialist, had a clear plan for private sector, target that the private sector had to achieve those days. Today, if you read, the private sector will always take a cue from government. Now, government is coming to read the budget. And the private sector is going to listen carefully and see all the things the government is going to say. It is that will convince them to say, yes, we can see that truly things can get better, and therefore, maybe if we are going to lay off people, we should hold on. Right? Or if we have suspended capital expenditure, we should rethink about it. It is what government is going to say and what government is going to do that is going to determine how the private sector will respond. Because the private sector doesn't run the country. You see? So I am saying that and I must tell you that the private sector has suffered a lot in this country, especially in the last couple of years. And I mean, if we all knew that supply chain disruptions were in the horizon when COVID struck. And I remember having conversation about supply chain. And I said, let's plan for it. But we did nothing. Today we all blame supply chain for high food prices and the rest of it. Why should we?
The private businesses themselves use the word sleeping. I mean, there are threats coming, there's AI. We don't know when the next COVID is getting. I mean, whoever thought that At a point in time, businesses that want everybody in the office were begging people to stay at home.
Yes.
Are we prepared? Let's even look at Ghanaian businesses. AI, you know, for all these threats and the opportunities. And what should they be doing?
I think that if you go out there, you'll find a momentum of young people doing all manner of things with AI. But you see, we need a national strategy for AI. What we want AI to do for us as a country. And the private sector will then feed into it. I hear there's something being done. I don't know the details, so I don't want to go there. But at least I haven't read anywhere that Ghana has had a document on AI and what we want to get out, because AI will disrupt our lives. And if you're not careful, it will further disrupt our country. So the private sector and government should be talking now, and should be talking very seriously, because there are many good things that we can use AI to do. For instance, let me tell you, most of the decisions we take in Ghana, we take them in darkness. Wow. They are not driven by any data.
Interesting.
That's true. And that is the power of AI, that it will help you gather the data so that your decisions are informed. But you take an example of e-levy recently. What data did the government use to say they will get $7 billion cedis?
Yeah.
What data?
Struggling to get the data.
What data did they use?
Maybe the tax units of the Ministry of Finance
and
might have given them.
But then around to be all was wrong. So AI can help us, and I mean can help government. For instance, AI can help government reduce all the large numbers and create jobs for those who will be made redundant. Because the good side, the world has lived through many revolutions. Every revolution comes with fear. But human beings have always survived and create more jobs than they feared will be destroyed by the revolution.
Doctor,
AI is the same.
I'll be coming back to some interesting development in the financial space, foreign exchange, and monies outside the banking system, and how we should bring it in. This is PM Express Business Edition, as we look at Ghana's economic recovery and what is in for the private sector. Or should the private firms be excited that indeed there are signs of recovery, and how should they position themselves? PM Express Business Edition is brought to you by Charity Properties and the Syntax Tank. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition, as we look at Ghana's economic recovery and the role or the outlook for the private sector. Whether the outlook will indeed be good for them, or they have to position themselves well to ensure that they indeed benefit from this recovery. I call him the chairman of our board chairman and also a strategist and economist, Dr. Ishmael Yamsom. Doc, you've played a very critical role in the financial space. You've chaired banks and all the rest. There have been several policies over the years to try and convince businesses, individuals who are having foreign exchange, to bring these monies into the banking space. Were you worried about this Cecilia Dapa issue when you had it? The bit about these X amounts of money in someone's house?
Well, George, I was not just worried, but I was disappointed.
Wow.
Well, I don't want to go into
not the, I mean, the whole idea about...
But the whole idea of so much money sitting in somebody's home. Yeah. And I've heard so many explanations. It comes from a wealthy home, blah, blah, blah. That is not the answer. But because it has been hugely politicized, we are hearing all manner. But let me tell you that for many, many, many years, Ghanaians chose to keep their monies outside the banking sector.
Why?
And yesterday or 2 days ago, I was surprised that the governor expressed worry that so much money should be found in a home. Yeah. I know he was also very careful about how far he could go. About 10, 12 years ago, a great effort was made to get Ghanaians saved. The savings and loans, they did a lot to bring monies into the banking sector. The likes of UT banks and all the rest of it, particularly the Ghanaian banks. Because let me tell you that multinational banks are not hugely interested in retail banking, in micro banking.
And that's why they are leaving. I mean,
yes, that's why they are leaving. Most of them are leaving Africa. So we can only do it, but it's only our people who can do it. Whatever went wrong, I can't judge on it now. I know the facts, but I'm not going to give you the judgment now. Whatever went wrong, that was the first shock to Ghanaians putting their monies into banks. Of course, the government came back and attempted to pay some of them. And today, some people have still not got their monies back.
That is the collapse of the bank.
The collapse of the banks.
Impacted.
So that was the first step.
Yeah.
And it shook a lot of people. Because suddenly, people who have invested 10,000 cedis, 20,000 cedis, suddenly found their monies at risk. Then came the collapse of the economy, the overborrowing that I was speaking about, that led to the Ghana losing access to the international market. And therefore, inflows. And what did we do? Now, we have to restructure the debt. And it was a condition by the fund before they would agree for a program. What did that do? The domestic debt exchange program, what has that done? It has even made it worse for Ghanaians to begin to think that, after all, and those who invested in bonds, everybody knew that the safest assets
was government bonds.
So I go and put my money there. For government to use my money to develop the country. Because we were all the time moaning that we didn't have long-term investment capital.
Infrastructure development.
So everybody goes and give their money to the man, to government. And the government says, oh, I borrowed money, but I can't pay. I can't pay you. I can pay you by these conditions. And the way it started was even made things a little unsavory, because it was like take it or leave it. And people have fought to even get pensioners funds. So those experiences have already shocked the confidence of individuals in the banking system. And the fund have said this clearly, that rebuilding confidence in the financial sector is going to be critical in the recovery of the economy. So, does it mean that some people have always known that there was going to be DDEP and therefore they took their money before the likes of us suffered, or what? So it is bad for Ghana, and especially if it happens that they are not ordinary people, but they are politicians, public officers. I don't know the facts, and I don't know that that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But the mere fact that you were a public officer,
and it appears she might not be named. Reports coming out even suggest that there are more public officials who are in that practice.
Exactly. So you are telling us, ordinary people, go and put your money in the bank. But you have decided that for some reason, you won't put your money in the Ghanaian banks.
But Doc, there's a flip side,
yes,
in which some would also want to put the blame. Let me start first with the banks, because you've been a board chair of a bank before. The difficulty, and I will put myself here, even moving money around through internet banking. There have been times when I've traveled, I went to the bank in Ghana here, I want to use my card outside. I get there, it's struggling to work. Some are saying that the commercial banks themselves haven't helped in reposing confidence that encourages people to place their funds with the difficulties people have had in getting access to their monies. Yeah. Instances where they walk to the counter to get their foreign exchange and they say you can't get it. All these things have also pushed people outside the banking system.
George, you are absolutely right. And I was chairman of a bank for 13 years, so this is not new to me at all. And it was one of the things that always made me angry. Because, and it happened to me, myself.
Interesting.
Went to US, I had given notice, I was going to US, I would use my card, they said, no problem. I go to US, they said, we can't take the card. So I had to be making phone calls upon phone calls upon phone calls, you know. And the embarrassment of arriving at a hotel and your card won't be taken and the rest of it. And let me separate, because as I've said, the multinational banks will not go out there to look for SME, small, micro, no. Maybe a little bit of medium-sized companies. But we haven't made, the banks have not made the effort. That is why the 7 or 9 banks or so which collapsed was a tragedy. Because if you take GN Bank, for instance, it was everywhere in this country, including my village. Everywhere. So they will collect the little monies and save. What they do with the money, I don't know. And I've told you, I don't know.
Don't want to know.
Yeah. But they were creating the confidence and the channel to get money into the banking sector. They were. Savings and loans, they were in the market every day, collecting money. They loaned 100 cedis, and you have to save 200 cedis, and it's easy. And they did all that. I think what has happened to this country is tragic. And I'll come back again to government. Both the monetary policy managers and the fiscal monetary managers have to sit and think hard and fast about how do we rebuild confidence in the banking sector.
And it comes back to finally on the regulator as well on this bit, that
exactly.
What has to be done differently.
Yes.
Because a lot more persons, and not to mention names, I know someone who is holding about $20 million in his house. A lot more persons want to keep their monies outside. And the Bank of Ghana data itself confirms that their money is outside the bank.
Precisely.
What should the Bank of Ghana be doing going forward to deal with the challenge?
Now, well, I think that I've never been a central banker before.
But you've chaired a bank for a long year.
But if you look at the structure, the legislative structure of how the central bank controls commercial banks, sometimes it's difficult for the banks themselves to have the money to give away, right? Now they're starting it even more, they're losing it, but it was much tighter. And I think the banks themselves have to become more creative and more courageous. Because sometimes I can also tell you the banks do a bad job in giving credit. Because they won't do the due diligence that they are supposed and expected to do. until the loan goes sour. Or they give you a loan, SME. Everybody knows the characteristics of SME. And I remember saying it many times at the bank. If we extend a loan, just let's have a relationship manager for that person. Maybe visit the person every month or something, look at the books, make sure that, you know, whatever is doing, the money going in is coming out, and that is not diverting funds. So you don't just grant the loan and go sleep and only get that one money and say, oh, I lent you money for 6 months, time is over, give me my money. It shouldn't be like that. So the banks have a role, the regulator has a role, and the government has a role to play. Because you see, if we don't do this, and the fund document is very clear, we have to rebuild confidence in the financial sector as quickly as we can, and we have to. We have no option.
Doc, your final thought for the businesses out there, some who are struggling, some who don't know what to do, and also the final word for government as well about how they should turn the corner and opening the new page to speed up this expected recovery.
No, I think for the private sector, my advice would be, and I've always said this, that this is not the time to pack baggage and leave.
In the midst of the challenges?
This is not the time. Because if you have been in this country before, you know that, you know, we fall, but we rise eventually. And we as businessmen also have to remember that we also have a role to play in rebuilding the economy. We have to have the confidence in the economy, but that confidence must come from what government says and what government does. Because government needs to be credible. And government needs to be credible to the extent that if government says the private sector is a partner, it must be a truly partner. Not a partner that you milk every time until, you know, there's nothing to squeeze out of the body. So my last word for government is that they have gone out there to promise. They have to live by the promises they gave. They must understand that those promises are going to have very serious impact on the private sector and on the citizens of this country. So they should not wait, like we did in the 80s, to go and produce a pump scat. Because the realities are there that quite a number of companies are going to collapse because they can't manage it. So once we think about, and that's where I'm interested in the bank, and they should have told us how we are going to get there, that we will start recovering from 2025. Have we thought about how many companies are going to die before 2025?
Because they say we'll go down before we come up.
Yes. So let us know how they will help the upturn. Because as for the downturn, we know. So we should be clear about what we are going to do for the private sector to resurrect and become a true partner. And I think the credibility from government is going to be very, very key, especially Monday.
Doctor, thank you so much for that. And the debate will still go on in your offices and in your homes about the right way to turn things around in terms of this expected recovery and whether indeed we sustain the steam and ensure that there is indeed much credibility for government. Dr Ishmael Yamsom, I appreciate your time so much. And I thank you so much. The chairman of all chairmen.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so much. And have a great day. This has been PM Express Business Edition, and we look forward to the mid-year budget review and see what can be done to turn things around for businesses, for individuals out there, and even the investors that are monitoring how we try and turn this around for this fund program that Ghana is under. Have a great day. My name is George Wiafe.